Hello, welcome to episode 3 of FlickHeads. My name's Des.
And I'm Dom. And how did we get to episode 3 already?
I know
we're
if only somebody would watch episode 1 and episode 2 would have would be doing better.
we're like Star Wars already. So this week we're talking about another 80s film. It was a cult classic, but it didn't do too well on its original release. It was
Which
kind of
is why
overshadowed.
I had never actually seen this movie, so this was Dom's recommendation.
Yes, and it was kind of overshadowed by a lot of the other big blockbusters in 1985. Namely Back to the Future and the Goonies and things like that. So today we are talking about To Live and Die in LA. So you said you only watched it for the first time, Des?
Yes, it was one of those ones that hadn't the name of the movie hadn't even made it into, when you have movies in the back of your head that you must get around to watching that. And it hadn't even and other people might say if this is a cult classic as you say, then how did it not make it into my psyche? How did I not know about it? But it's just one of those things, and we all have those lists. That'd be a subject for other podcast, wouldn't it? The movies that we should have seen that we haven't. So I've ticked one
Um,
off my list, and I am delighted to have seen it.
I'll stick Gladiator at the top of my list then.
Yeah, I didn't want to
Yes.
mention that, but
um, yes, it was a pretty decent 80s action thriller, but it was kind of dark and gritty as opposed to the more 80s action cop buddy thrillers that we're used to, a bit like Beverly Hills Cop and Tango and Cash and things like that. It was a lot more dark, a lot more gritty, and there's maybe a little more under the themes were a little darker underneath than just your normal buddy cop movie. I like the 80s aesthetic with the set in LA, the neon lights, the vibe, the car chases. And I think Willem Dafoe played a really, really good villain, but he's always kind of creepy anyway.
yeah, I think he was really good in that role. He was, as you say, that the movie doesn't have that comedy element that, as you say, Tango and Cash, Beverly Hills Cop, Turner and Hooch. If you really want
Yeah.
to think about the sort of the comedy side of 80s cop movies, but it's a real gritty movie. As you say, that the Willem Dafoe played that role well, and and he's an actor that I don't remember any of his early stuff. So this is the youngest I've seen him in a movie,
Right.
and he's quite an intimidating character.
I think he comes across like that in a lot of his films, but yeah, this is one of his earliest ones, and you can see from an early age, from an early start, he was playing those kind of roles. I think the film itself sort of you can see where the cop, played by William Peterson, he is the kind of cop in those movies that will break the law and will do anything to get justice or to get the end result. When you see that his partner wasn't willing to go along with certain aspects of what he wanted to do, sometimes
Yeah,
the lines between law enforcement and criminality are blurred because while they're trying to get the bad guy, there's doing necessary they're necessarily doing bad things to get to him.
yeah, yeah. Which I suppose is a theme through a lot of those '80s police movies, whether it's set in LA or set in New York. I wonder how accurate that is to real life. I mean, there's no doubt there's corruption in the police the way there is in all walks of life, but
Yeah.
was it as widespread within American policing in the 1980s as the movies would suggest it is? And where do you draw that line? But on the subject of the movie, that's nothing new.
Yeah.
That for us watching movies, that the police will blur those lines. But yeah, it was quite. I have to say, I was quite shocked. Big spoiler here if anybody hasn't seen the movie. Give you a second to pause and run off and watch the movie. But Um, whenever it turned out the guy was chasing him through the streets. First of all, I couldn't understand why like 50 guys were chasing this 50 grand. And then when it came out that he was an FBI agent, the fact that he was shot by accident by one of his own men. And when that turned out that he was an FBI agent, I was like, holy shit! Like that was a moment for me in the movie.
That was another big moment that you didn't see coming. And
Yeah.
I had actually forgotten about it until I rewatched it as well. I was like, I knew that the guys were chasing him, but I didn't realize they were FBI agents until obviously the next scene when they're talking about it.
Yeah.
But you were saying about spoilers, and
Mhm.
the other big spoiler is the ending
Mhm.
when the main character just gets shot in the face with a shotgun. There's no coming back from that, you know. And
Exactly.
sorry, go
I
on.
was just going to say that they could have, not that they could have, and I love that they didn't. But so many movies, when a main character is killed, well, first of all, it's more common nowadays because people want that shock factor. But I always feel like there's always a bit of ambiguity. Oh, are they dead? Are they not? The fact that he was shot in the face, close range, shotgun. I was like, what the hell? He's dead. There was like there was two moments in the movie where like, oh, hands up moments, like, oh my god, he's dead, and that's it. There's no coming back from it. And I sort of wondered where the movie would go in the last five or 10 minutes after that, because I'm
Yeah.
like, how could he be dead?
Well, the film was actually if it went in circles then when the film started getting around on home video, and that's where it became a cult classic. Then people started watching it because it made about 17 million off a 6 million budget in the 80s, which wasn't too bad, but it still didn't reach the heights of Beverly Hills Cop or the Goonies and things we spoke about before, because those films were a lot bigger and blockbusters. They
Yeah.
did better, so it was kind of overshadowed. But I was watching the extras on on the Blu-ray here, and
Uh-huh.
there's an alternative ending. And the director, the production company wanted him to change the ending, so they actually filmed another ending, and it's on the disc
Right.
there, and it is he survives the gunshot in the locker room,
Okay.
but he doesn't get shot in the face. In the alternate ending, he gets shot in the stomach, but he still survives it. And the next scene is they're on stakeout in snowy Alaska, and you're just supposed to believe they survived all that and they moved on to their next mission or their next
Well,
assignment. But
yeah, I'm just going to say I'm glad they didn't run with that, because if both characters had lived, you can't
yeah,
foresee a scenario where they continue to go about their business as police officers, even though they didn't kill the FBI agent themselves. There's no way that they were going to just continue with life as normal
well,
had one of
one
them
they
not been
were
killed.
exactly, and their relationship was quite tense anyway, because
Mm-hmm.
he was doing
Yeah.
stuff that the other one didn't agree with, and they were constantly bickering and arguing. The other one was getting anxious about the stuff he was doing, so it wouldn't have worked anyway. And William Friedkin, the director, didn't. He filmed it really for the studio to show them, but he wanted it to go down the way the original way the way it went down, the way you've seen it, and the main character gets shot because life isn't always where you get shot and you live anyway at the end.
Yeah.
And most films do try and proclaim that happy ending of you get shot but you can still live, or you're like, it's
Yeah.
unbelievable, all these action films where characters are getting shot and blowing up and they still live, whereas this one, shot in the face, dead, that's it.
Yeah, that's it, and that's true. It's frustrating almost when you're watching the movies and you see somebody who's a sharpshooter picking people off, and when they shoot at the main character, they're missing them. They're missing shooting 100 rounds and missing them even from close range. You're like, suddenly this guy hasn't got an aim.
Yeah.
But equally, the main characters are the main characters for a reason. We can't have them being shot at the beginning of a movie.
Well, speaking of the main characters, another reason why it probably didn't do well is they weren't big characters. In the 80s, you had Stallone and Schwarzenegger and Eddie Murphy and all that. So they were the big hitters for the action films. So this here along comes an action film without any big names, and
Yeah.
then you've got Willem Dafoe, who's early in his career, is probably the biggest name, and William Peterson, you probably know, went on to star in CSI. You used to like
Hmm.
CSI, didn't you? So he went
Yeah.
on
Well,
to become.
it's one of them.
There's
Yeah.
so many CSIs, but yeah, he went on to star in the CSI series, and then obviously Willem Dafoe became a big star, but there was no other big stars at the time in that movie, so which is another reason why it maybe slipped under the radar and then found its home as a cult classic on home video and streaming.
Yeah. Yeah, I did actually have to do a wee bit of browsing on IMDb, looking up the what the people had moved on to doing after that. Because there was a few people that you sort of half thought I recognized, but turned out that I hadn't. But still, such an enjoyable movie. There's a couple of lines that stood out for me was excuse the language, but whenever she said she needs her bread, and he says, if you want bread, fuck a baker. I thought that
I like that
that
one.
was quite a funny line.
And obviously her bread, she meant money because she was trying to give him information for money. There was some
Yeah.
good lines in it as well. I enjoyed that. And then the kind of gritty film aesthetic that it portrays then went on to influence other films. You know, you can see aspects of. Have you seen Heat with Michael Mann's Heat? The
Uh-huh.
Al
Uh-huh.
Pacino and De
So,
Niro takedown. Well, you can see certain things from that. You know, from Heat in that where Heat borrowed from that. Tarantino praised the style of that film To Live and Die in LA as well. So it's what Tarantino enjoyed it.
a couple of
Um,
movies that came into my head while watching it were Terminator, and well, I think it was the viaduct, the chase through the viaduct made
I
me
was
think
going to
of
say I was
Terminator.
thinking that when I watched it. Yeah.
Yeah. And the other one was Die Hard, which of course was filmed in LA.
Yes, Nakatomi Towers. Although you didn't see much of the skyline, did you? What did you think of the car
I think
chase?
I think it was more the sort of colors in the sky and a wee bit of the LA skyline, but that the colors in it, I think maybe that's what it's like in LA. I've only been
This
briefly,
the
but
smog and the
yeah,
haze. Yeah, that was really
yeah,
well done.
probably
I
it's
like
probably to
that.
do with the heat and that. But yeah, what did I think of the car chases? I I quite enjoyed most of it. I liked the bit through the viaduct. I did wonder why there were so many cars chasing him for 50 grand, but obviously it's because he was a FBI agent,
Yeah.
as we talked about. Um, I have to say, I wish I had a car that could withstand driving over tracks and bouncing about and still continuing to drive afterwards, as they famously do in a lot of movies. So it was a good chase. I did enjoy it. Um, I always enjoy the viaduct and the LA freeways in car chases, although I'm not sure how I felt about him driving the wrong way down the freeway. It was a bit, but that was the only bit. It was a bit almost slapstick at times. Um, I don't know whether they wanted it to seem comedic, but it did for me as they went down the wrong way on the freeway. What did you think?
As far as I'm aware, they did film it in LA traffic. So
Hmm.
just from listening to some of the stuff on the disc, they did film it in LA traffic, but obviously a lot of it would have been constructed so for safety reasons. But I
Yeah.
enjoyed it. It was billed as one of the best car chases in movie history. But when I rewatched it, I was sort of expecting more. And maybe back in the 80s or early 90s when I did watch it, I was like, oh wow. But nowadays we see car chases that can last for 20 minutes in a film. So maybe at the time it was groundbreaking, and now it's still a good car chase. It's well executed, but there are better ones.
Well, that's it. As you say, it probably for its time would have been one of the best. There's been some. It could be a podcast on its own to talk about some memorable car chases in other movies.
Yeah.
But no, it definitely held its own, and for its era, it was. But as you say, the technology they have now to film a car scene, a car chase, and accidents, and that is so much more advanced. So for its time, it was a great scene.
A lot of it probably wouldn't even be done on a real road now, on an actual
Exactly,
road.
exactly.
Yeah. One of the things I thought was, when you're watching things like buddy movies like Beverly Hills Cop and stuff, you have a main character who you like, who's the hero, and a villain. But I find in this one there was no real heroes or villains. They were both maybe as bad as each other. Even William
Hmm.
Peterson, he played William Chance as the cop. I thought
Uh-huh.
Chance was maybe breaking the rules, made him just as bad as Willem Dafoe's character. There's
Yeah,
no clear heroes. You can't just say he's the good guy and he's the bad guy. What do you think?
yeah. Well, I suppose it's that it brings us back to that debate. What is a necessary sort of or an acceptable amount of law breaking to bring down a bigger criminal? But we know now that person is would be a criminal, considered a criminal just the same way.
Yeah.
I suppose he was clear in his willingness to break the law to get to take the sort of guy off the streets, the criminal off the streets, even though he might be a criminal himself. But I think the difficulty or the more sort of questionable character was his new partner that didn't seem happy with breaking the law, but equally had that moral standing that he wasn't gonna hand in his mates. He wasn't gonna roll over on him and play victim.
Yeah. I think by actually being as bad as him, though, it sort of defeats the purpose of him trying to bring him down. Because if, for example, if Willem Dafoe's character hadn't died, would all the evidence really have stood up in court because he broke the law to get him there?
Yeah, yeah,
suppose I'm,
that's
I
that's
suppose I'm
true.
thinking too much into it, but you sort of think there's no heroes and no villains. They're both just as villainy in this film.
Yeah, but yeah. Suppose if the character is sort of a international terrorist or a gun runner, and you have
Mm.
this cop that's slightly bending the law, but when you have a cop who is completely running ragged over the law to arrest somebody that's printing money, to have those sort of extremes move closer together, where you have two crimes that are almost similar in a way.
Mm.
Has he gone too far in his willingness to
Pursuit.
break the law to bring in a criminal that he is as much a criminal himself? So maybe
Yeah.
that's part of the reason why the writer had that character, killed, because that's the that's that needed to happen, and you see that quite often in the movies where there's a character like how does he come back from this,
Yeah.
and they'll quite often they'll they'll be killed off because as viewers we can't accept that they could come back from this and live a normal life or continue to be a cop, or
Mm.
in a different movie
That's,
if you have somebody who's a criminal that suddenly does good, they're quite often
yeah.
killed off because you don't want to see them go to jail, but you can't accept that they just went on with their
Just
life
walk
and
away and get
turned
away
into a
scot
family
free.
man. Yeah, exactly.
I suppose we should touch on that the story is about Willem Dafoe, who's a master counterfeiter, and William Peterson's bringing him down because he's counterfeiting loads, millions and millions of dollars and selling them on. He's the biggest in LA, so we're trying to bring him down. But see the scenes where they were actually showing you counterfeiting money. They were
Uh-huh.
so accurate. They were so accurate that the filmmakers had to clear things with the U.S. government to make sure
I,
to avoid accusations of making real counterfeit bills. They had
I
to
did
show,
wonder.
yeah,
Yeah, I did wonder because the process they're showing you, I sort of thought to myself, is that accurate? Have they, as writers and um, directors and that will often go to the trouble of making sure it's accurate. And I suppose they don't want to call out on their inaccuracies, and as artists, they want to create something that's as accurate as to real
Yeah.
life as possible. But I did actually think that when because he printed the black and then he printed the green over it, and he was cutting out the serial numbers, and it looked like a very accurate process. And I did think to myself, they need to be careful. So it's interesting to hear that.
Yeah, it was quite an intricate process, it showed you, and maybe they were worried at the time of people copying it. So they had to
Yeah,
clear it with the US government to make sure they weren't actually making fake
yeah.
bills at the time.
It was so
So
much. It was so much easier to print fake money in the Goonies, wasn't it?
yeah,
It was just a print run. There was no ink of
just
two different
fill it
colors,
down.
and there was no cutting out. It was just they were just flying out there.
What was it? He said $100 bills, $100 bills, $100 bills.
That's right. And of
Brilliant.
course, he's just got his. There's a wee bit of talk in the press at the minute about the Goonies because Data, Data's character, or the actor that plays him, has just got his star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame,
Oh, has he? I
and
hadn't
the
heard
cast
that.
of Goonies. Yeah, the cast of the Goonies were together recently, and of course the question was asked about a sequel, and they said, we want to do it, the director wants to do it, we just need a script that works. And we talked in our first podcast about how we don't want the sequel to the Back to the Future trilogy, but I don't know about you, but I'm ready for a sequel to the Goonies.
I'd have a sequel to the Goonies. Maybe we should write the script if they're looking for one.
Oh yeah, yeah. So just
Give
look
it,
at our
give it
numbers on. So just look at our numbers on YouTube and go, these
YouTube
are
and
the
go,
guys.
they're the guys. They
they
know
had
what
eight,
they're
they had
talking
8 views in episode 2.
about. Something else I wanted to touch on was director used real ex-cops and criminals for information to build those characters as well when he was making that
Right.
film, for authenticity. So a lot of the stuff that we're probably seeing did happen. You touched on at the start of the podcast about did these cops break the law as much as maybe movies show you or push the boundaries? Well, they used real cops or ex-cops and criminals to try and build those characters to be as real as possible. So I suppose it's plausible that those characters or those things did actually happen in a roundabout way in real life, maybe with other cases.
Yeah.
So it's very plausible that could have happened. And another movie that I thought it reminded me of was Training Day with Denzel Washington, which I watched only about 2 weeks ago. Have you seen that?
Yeah, it's late 90s, isn't it? 99 and around that era. Training Day.
99, I think it might be 2001, between 99 and 2001. And it's
In and around that era.
Denzel and Ethan Hawke, and he's taken on a new rookie cop, and he's the main
Yes.
cop, but he just doesn't do things by the book at all, and it
Yes.
sort of plays out in a similar way. It was quite good. So another suggestion
It
for
must
you.
be difficult. It must be difficult. Yeah, I have seen it. It must be difficult to be in that situation as a rookie. Now, I suppose the new partner in this movie wasn't a rookie cop,
Yeah,
but it must be difficult to sort of to be partnered up with somebody like that, and then you're thinking to yourself, is this how it is? Is this what you have to do to make a bust? And it happens in a lot of movies. I think it was oh, movie's gone in my head. I think it's another movie anyway, more recent, where the same thing happens, and he's like, we're going to let this guy go. He's like, yeah, we'll let him go. And now he owes us information,
yes.
and that sort of that you go to whatever they call it, cop school, the police academy. You go to the police academy and you learn the rules, and of course if you're a rookie and you're put in with a cop that's been doing it for years, and then your first day on the job you're being told, no, that's not how it works. This is how it really worked. It
Yeah.
must be
Is that
difficult.
not like driving a car though? You do your lessons and you're told to do this and do that and 10 to 2, and then the minute you get in you're on your own, you're like all the bad habits creep in. I wonder if it's
No,
something
mate,
similar.
I always drive 10 to 2 and I never break the speed limit. Are you
Aye,
suggesting you do otherwise?
same here. No, same here.
Let's
So
go back to the movie.
back to the movie. But I think it's probably come through now as one of the great 80s films that was overlooked at the time. And obviously coming out in Blu-ray and streaming and home video even in the 90s when it was on VHS. I remember having the big box rental one in my collection of VHSs at the time. And I think that's where it gained just new appreciation and new heights for that film. Because Friedkin was coming off The Exorcist. You know, he had made The Exorcist before, so he had already made a blockbuster film that had shocked audiences. So when that happens, audiences and studios alike are expecting the director to then go on and make the next thing the same, to have the same heights and the same success, and that doesn't always happen. So,
and it was,
they
as you
wanted
said,
him
it
to
was still
do.
financially.
Sorry, go
Yeah,
on.
as you said, it was still financially successful. It just wasn't a blockbuster, and I suppose it was being held up against his previous movie, but also being held up against the other, big police dramas that were coming out at the
Yeah,
time.
it's gonna be compared to all those other 80s cop films that came out at the time, as you say, but it just it was just slipped under the radar for a lot of people, including you.
Yeah.
What did you think of the fare, the airfare to San Francisco at $45 in the airport?
I did notice that. I was like, if only. Although, I suppose it's all relative. It's an internal flight, isn't it?
I suppose it'd be like a £20 flight for us these days, 20, £30. But yeah, it's like $45. And then it was $1.50 into the strip club as well. Did you notice that?
$1.50. Didn't know you had to pay in.
$1.50. Well, the cop didn't, but when he was talking to the girl behind the counter, two customers come in and she asked them for $1.50.
Right, I didn't notice that. That's
So
attention to
yeah.
detail that I like.
Oh well.
There's a couple of scenes I enjoyed. It was whenever he was arranging for the guy in prison to be, he was arranging the hit on him,
Yes.
and he would back round to collect his money. The way he stood, face to face with the guy that he'd hired, and he pulls the knife and holds it to his neck, and Willem Dafoe's character just stands there without a care, just that menacing look. I always love that in a character where they're not afraid of a gun or a knife. They've obviously been in that criminal underworld for a long time, and this doesn't shock them.
And he was only a wee small character. Like the other fella was taller than him, and he wasn't afraid of him at all.
Yeah.
And then, did you like the part where he got him out of jail because he wanted him to help him with the case? He said, "Can I go and visit my daughter in hospital?" That was another scene you weren't sort of expecting, because the attack sort of happened in the hallway, out of the blue like that.
Yeah, I did. You obviously predict. You're thinking, oh yeah, he wants to visit his daughter. So whenever he gave a name, and he actually, because you think if he just brings him in there, then that's ridiculous. But the fact that he rings and checks at the hospital, does his due diligence, and anything, and I'm thinking, is he going to go and see his daughter with handcuffs on? And obviously he was thinking the same thing. So he thinks he'll do the right thing, and takes off the handcuffs, and then no sooner is that done, and he's jumped.
He's John. He played it well. Like he did play. He played the con well in escaping. He had that all in his head to go to the hospital, and then not ask for his handcuffs to be removed until he removed them, and it gave him no suspicion then, which was quite kind of a good twist.
Of course, the reason he was in jail is it was implied that the other guy had ratted him out, the guy that took the money and put it in a safe.
Yeah.
And of course, Willem Dafoe's character goes round to the house, sends his girlfriend in. She opens the door. She says, "I love the rain," and she opens the back door. And I actually didn't pick up why she'd opened the back door, but that was obviously to allow him to sneak in because the cops were staking out the front of the house.
Yeah.
And he met a rather unfortunate end. So he did.
that was quite violent too.
Shot in the nether regions, shall we say?
Yeah.
Before being finished off.
Exactly. and he didn't rat him out. He had double crossed him because he had the money in the safe that the guy in jail said he had.
Yeah, that's it. So it's likely that he kept the money and then reported to the police that he would be at the airport, because
Yeah,
that would have taken suspicion off him. So I think the guy in the house had ratted out the guy that got arrested at the airport.
yeah.
And in
So
talking about the airport scene, there's just
yeah,
one other thing I want to mention: the chase on the foot chase in the airport.
yes,
I quite enjoyed. There was one particular scene where he jumps up onto the moving walkways that they have
I knew you were
in
going to say
airports.
that.
He jumps up and runs across the handles of it, and
Yeah.
it was just a great scene. I just loved
And
that.
I
I
was
don't know
thinking
why,
when I watched that, I
particularly.
wonder how many takes it took to do that.
Exactly.
Because
You think
they're
the glass
constantly
underneath?
they're
You would
constantly
worry the
moving,
glass
and there's
underneath
people
would.
beside each. There's people on either side, and
Yeah.
the conveyor belts are moving. So, but I wonder
And
if he ran
the
in the metal bit in the middle.
there was one scene where you could see the metal bit on that particular scene. It looked like they were just the level walkways, but we overthinking this. But did one go one way and one the other way, or were they both moving the same direction? Because I was thinking, how on earth are you running on that if one belt's moving one way and one belt's moving the other way?
I
But
did think that too.
the way he was elevated above the rest of the crowd, and that was
Yeah,
his way of getting through the crowd. I really enjoyed that.
it was a good scene, and I thought exactly my thought process was the same as you because the way the camera was angled, you couldn't see the walkway, or it just looked like he was walking on the handrails. But then the next scene, you
Yeah.
could see a metal bit in between. So I wonder if the first one was just he was running on the handrails, one going either direction. But I'd be interested to know how many takes it took for him to do that. But that was a cool
Is
scene
there
as
is there
well.
many Are there many other features on the Blu-ray? Might
There's a
there be
few
something in it
interviews.
about?
Yeah, there's a
Yeah.
few interviews, and there's a director's commentary and how they did the stunts and things like that. So actually, two discs in it.
So there might be a wee bit about
Oh,
that
well,
on one of those discs.
it
So
might
it
be
might be
what?
worth looking at after. But there might be some information on that on the director's commentary. So that might be worth watching. Later
Ah,
at
yes,
another
watch
time.
it and then put it on at that scene. He'll probably tell you about the scene at the time.
Yeah, that's it. So all in all, delighted with your recommendation. Delighted to have
Okay.
added another 80s cop classic to the. It definitely is. It's right up there. I think I texted you after watching and said thank you for recommending that movie, because it's, as you said, when you recommend a movie to somebody, you want them to like it as much as you do. You recommend it for a reason. So if somebody
Yeah,
goes back and goes, "Oh, that was grand, that was good, I quite enjoyed that," you're like, "You quite enjoyed it. It was brilliant." You want them
it was
to,
brilliant.
to feel
Or
the
you
same
want to
way as
talk
you do.
about it. Yeah, you want to be able to talk about
Exactly.
it and discuss it rather than go, oh, it was all right, and then not really much more to say, and you think, oh, they didn't really like it.
Well, that's it. I don't know what this podcast would be like if I was saying that was crap, didn't like that, didn't like that. But no, I really enjoyed it. I will encourage other people to watch it now.
Yeah.
And anybody that's watched this far that hasn't seen the movie, sorry for the spoilers, but you had your chance. But definitely watch the movie. It's a real, gritty 80s cop drama, and it's
Yeah.
definitely worth the watch.
And I remember recommending it to my dad as well in the late 90s when I was watching it. I watched it in VHS and I was like, Dad, you should watch this because it's got a cool car chase and he loves cars, so kind of cool. So I will let you pick the film for next time, and we
Well,
will.
we did talk already about another one, so
We'll
you'll
not
have
say it
to
now.
tune in next week. Well,
Yeah.
not say it now. You'll have to tune in next week and find out.
Or maybe watch the
And
socials for a few clues.
yeah, that's it. That's it. Follow us on social media. And if you've watched this far and you haven't liked and subscribed, then what are you doing? Help us out.
Yeah.
We're only
Like and
starting off here,
subscribe down
so
here. Come on down here.
not what the young, it's not the young ones say. Like and subscribe and share and all that. So
No,
if you
the
haven't
young
watched
ones
this
have
far,
graphics and they go here and here.
yeah, we don't have any graphics. Maybe someday.
No.
But no, if you have watched this far, appreciate it, and thanks very much.
Thank you. Bye.